If you were buried alive right now, and the only thing separating you from death was a few inches of cracked concrete and absolute darkness, how long would you last? Minutes? Hours? In 2019, just outside Columbus, Ohio, a 29-year-old maintenance worker survived 9 days trapped beneath a collapsed suburban mall. 9 days without sunlight, 9 days without food, 9 days barely surviving on contaminated water dripping from a broken pipe. But what truly disturbed him wasn't the hunger or the pain crushing his leg. It was the certainty that, in the darkness beneath thousands of tons of rubble, he was not alone. Westbrook Plaza Mall had been dying for years. Like many American shopping centers built in the late 80s, it once thrived with families, packed parking lots, and long holiday lines. By 2019, half the storefronts were empty. The anchor department store had closed. The escalators groaned louder than the customers who still used them. At night, the place felt cavernous and hollow, the fluorescent lights flickering, as if they were struggling to justify staying on. Daniel Harper had worked maintenance there for 3 years. He knew the building's secrets better than anyone. Every service corridor, every locked supply room, every narrow concrete tunnel beneath the public floors. On a Tuesday evening, at 8:47 p.m., Daniel received a call about a leak near the abandoned food court. It sounded routine. Tenants complained about leaks all the time. He grabbed his flashlight and toolbox and headed toward the lower maintenance level, an area invisible to shoppers. The air down there always felt heavier, thick with dust and the smell of damp concrete. Exposed pipes lined the ceiling. Water stains traced dark veins along the walls. He followed the sound of dripping until he reached the corridor beneath the food court. At exactly 9:12 p.m., he heard a noise that didn't belong. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was subtle, like a deep internal crack traveling through the bones of the building. Daniel froze. He looked up just as a jagged fracture split across the ceiling. For a split second, there was silence. Then the world collapsed. Concrete slabs dropped like falling cliffs. Steel beams twisted and screamed. The floor vanished beneath a cloud of dust, and Daniel felt himself thrown sideways before everything went black. When he regained consciousness, he couldn't see anything. The darkness was complete and suffocating. He inhaled and immediately choked on powdered concrete. Pain radiated from his lower body. Something immense pinned him from the waist down. His left leg felt crushed, trapped beneath debris he couldn't move. His flashlight was gone. His phone shattered somewhere out of reach. He tried to call out, but the sound was swallowed by the rubble. No alarms echoed. No distant sirens wailed. Only silence pressed against his ears. Above ground, parts of the mall had partially collapsed, triggering evacuations in the main retail areas. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but early reports suggested no customers were in the affected maintenance corridor. Daniel's car remained in the parking lot, but supervisors assumed he had left with a coworker. In the confusion, his absence went unnoticed. Beneath layers of broken concrete and twisted metal, he lay conscious but invisible. The first hours were driven by adrenaline. Daniel screamed until his throat felt torn raw. He pounded on a loose metal pipe within arm's reach, hoping the vibrations might travel upward. Nothing answered him. Time became meaningless in the dark. Without light, there was no way to measure day or night. His breathing slowed to conserve oxygen. Dust coated his tongue. His leg throbbed violently, then began to feel disturbingly numb. Eventually, thirst replaced fear as his most immediate enemy. His lips cracked, his mouth dry, until swallowing felt like sand scraping down his throat. Then he heard it, the faint, irregular drip of water. Somewhere near his shoulder, a fractured pipe leaked steadily. With painful effort, he shifted his upper body just enough to tilt his face beneath it. Drop by drop, he caught the water on his tongue. It tasted metallic and stale, but it kept him alive. By what he guessed was the second day, exhaustion blurred his thoughts. He stopped screaming and began listening instead. The building above him creaked unpredictably, settling under its own weight. Occasionally, he heard distant thuds, perhaps rescue teams moving debris. But mixed within those sounds was something else. Faint, measured footsteps crunching lightly over rubble. Whenever he called out, the steps stopped instantly. On the third day, hallucinations crept in. Dehydration and darkness distort the mind. He thought he heard music drifting from the old food court, an upbeat holiday song the mall used to play in December. He imagined laughter echoing down corridors. He even smelled cinnamon pretzels for a fleeting moment. but the scraping sound returned again and again, slow and deliberate, as if something were dragging itself carefully through the debris. Above ground, structural engineers warned that the lower maintenance level was dangerously unstable. Rescue teams hesitated to send workers deep inside. Still, inconsistencies in staff logs began to surface. Daniel hadn't officially clocked out. A coworker confirmed seeing him head toward the food court leak. By the 5th day, search crews expanded their operation. Below, Daniel's body weakened. Hunger gnawed at him before fading into dull emptiness. His leg felt cold and distant. Infection threatened. The dripping pipe slowed to an agonizing trickle. Then, in the heavy silence, he heard it clearly. A breath. Not wind, not shifting rubble. A slow, steady inhale and exhale just beyond the slab of concrete above his chest. He held his own breath to listen. It continued for nearly a minute before fading away. On the 7th day, Daniel forced himself into a patter. 3 taps on the pipe. Pause. 3 taps again. He repeated it every hour. Above him, rescue teams deployed sensitive listening devices. Faint rhythmic tapping registered on their equipment. Hope surged. But between his tapping attempts, he heard something that froze his blood. 3 taps from somewhere deeper in the rubble. A pause. Then 3 more. Not from above. From the side. Mirroring him. By the 8th day, Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. His kidneys strained. His thoughts fractured into dreams and reality. Then he heard unmistakable sounds. Engines, metal cutting, muffled voices shouting instructions, dogs barking. Real rescue activity. He summoned what little strength remained and tapped again. This time, voices responded faintly. The cutting grew louder. Light vibrations traveled through the concrete. Yet beneath the rescue noise, another sound moved rapidly away, scraping, retreating as if fleeing the approaching light. Daniel felt dust fall across his face in thin streams. Something shifted above him, not collapsing, but moving. On the 9th day, at 3:42 p.m., a narrow beam of light pierced the darkness near his shoulder. It burned his eyes like fire. Hands reached through the opening, clearing debris carefully to avoid triggering another collapse. Daniel tried to speak but could barely form words. When they finally pulled him free, he had lost 23 pounds. Severe dehydration had nearly shut down his kidneys. His crushed leg required multiple surgeries. But against overwhelming odds, he was alive. Later, investigators reviewing body camera footage noticed something unsettling. Just seconds before the final slab was lifted, a faint scraping noise echoed from deeper within the sealed corridor, moving away from Daniel's location. Rescue dogs that had confidently tracked his scent refused to proceed further into that section. They growled, ears pinned back, and resisted commands. Structural instability was cited as the reason no deeper search was conducted. Daniel spent months recovering physically, but privately, he admitted something that still haunts him. On the 2nd day, when he first heard footsteps, he saw a shape interrupting the faintest sliver of filtered light through a crack above him. It stood motionless, watching. He couldn't describe it clearly, only that it blocked the light unnaturally long before shifting away. The mall was demolished 6 months later. Officials blamed water damage and neglected infrastructure. The lower maintenance corridor, where Daniel had been trapped, was sealed before demolition for safety reasons. No additional survivors were found. No animals were discovered in the rubble. Daniel rarely speaks publicly now. He says the collapse may have saved him, because whatever shared that darkness retreated only when light broke through. As rescuers carried him out on a stretcher, he turned his head toward the shadowed entrance of the maintenance tunnel. For a brief second, he thought he saw movement in the dust, stopping precisely where sunlight touched the ground. 9 days buried alive will change your body forever. But 9 days believing something unseen is inches away from you changes something deeper. So the next time you walk through a nearly empty mall and hear an echo from a corridor marked "Employees Only," ask yourself one question. If the lights went out and the ceiling fell, would you truly be alone in the dark? Or would something already be there, waiting patiently for the sound of your first desperate tap?